Welcome back to On Politics here on KXAN to bring you an inside look at what's happening at the state capitol this week. We have our On Politics panel here this morning. Dr. Richard Middleton is the Legislative Committee Chair for the Texas Association of School Administrators. Since 1990, he served as Superintendent of the Northeast Independent School District in San Antonio. Bill Hammond is President and CEO of the Texas Association of Business. He also served 4 terms in the Texas House during the 80s, where he successfully authored the Texas Education Agency Sunset Bill. Clay Robinson is Communications Specialist at the Texas State Teachers Association. Also with us today, James Golson, an Education Policy Analyst with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And KXAN political reporter Josh Hinkle is on deck as well with your online chat questions for the panel. The governor is adamant about not touching the rainy day fund. Wouldn't that force over 1,000 school districts across Texas to raid their own rainy day funds?
Well, I think what we're facing right now is the idea that you've got not only the rainy day fund, but you've got a structural deficit that's really going to create the need to eliminate a number of jobs if we don't see a better financial picture in the very near future, or if we don't have more flexibility. Now, one of the things we're asking for is that kind of flexibility that could perhaps stave off the next year or so in terms of giving teachers furloughs or administrators furloughs. But all those are temporary kind of solutions. We are asking for a temporary solution right off the bat to address our current needs, but we also need to talk about how we deal with the structural deficit and how we actually redesign the whole school finance program so that the funding system and the accountability system match. The school administrators are very concerned because we don't want to cut teachers and lose our best young teachers off probationary contracts. We've got a lot of new standards and a very exciting time in public education because we see not only the preparation of elementary teachers and students, but also our high school students with the new 4x4, the new kinds of programs that we're seeing in the college preparation and college readiness. All of this needs well-prepared teachers, and we need to keep those teachers in the classroom. Our concern now is how do we get past this shortfall, how we do that because of timelines, and then we need to get on with solving the bigger problem. I think it's more than just the rainy day fund.
Mr. Hammond?
Well, we have proposed that we do spend some $6 billion of the rainy day fund and do some other things which we think are appropriate to bring the level of spending for the next biennium up to the level of spending in the current biennium. We think that that can be done without any new taxes. That's our position. And we think that given the economic situation Texas is facing, that's appropriate going forward, and that the needs, perhaps not the wants, but the needs of Texans can be met.
Ms. Robinson?
I will go farther than that. We need a balanced approach to this budget problem, including spending all of the rainy day fund, $9.4 billion, raising taxes, raising some new revenue. Our school finance system has been underfunded for many, many years before the recession. There will be some cuts, we recognize that, but we need to find new revenue and once and for all have an adequate school finance system.
Mr. Golson?
We agree that the school finance system should definitely be looked at. Texas Public Policy Foundation believes that the education budget can be balanced and addressed, hopefully without touching the rainy day fund. If the rainy day fund is to be touched, we'd like it to be done as an absolute last resort.
Got a graphic I'd like to put up. Nearly half of all the jobs in Texas public schools are non-teaching positions: administrators, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, janitors. Could there be savings in turning over some of these jobs to the private sector, or getting some solution to get that number down a little bit?
We've just made a lot of studies on how you would outsource a lot of these costs, and you still have to pay or still have to hire people to do those kinds of jobs. School districts are very complex this day, and the needs and wants of many people in our school systems are that you have these kinds of people. We also have a lot of people here to deal with the mandates that we have to provide and also have to comply with in our schools. So whether you actually contract or whether you hire them yourselves, we've looked at both in my school district. We've had an austerity program on for the last 3 years to reduce our budget by $63 million. I think that we will look at some consolidation of services. We've done that in the past. But quite frankly, there are a lot of people that need to deliver the services in our school systems. We are doing a lot to consolidate that. But it is today we have a lot of needs for our children, and we are providing those.
The trend over the years has clearly been to get us to the point where we have essentially a 1-to-1 ratio of teachers to non-teachers. And if you go back a few years, you'll see that the ratio was more like 2-to-1 teachers to non-teachers. In the real world, in the private sector, There's been a increase in productivity. We need to look to ways and means to increase the productivity of the school systems across the state and reduce the cost to the taxpayers.
What?
I can't talk about administration, but I'll talk about the classroom. Texas does not waste money in the classroom. Texas ranks 37th among the states in the amount of per pupil expenditure on instruction, somewhere about $9,200 per kid per year, which is about $1,300 or $1,400 below the national average. We did a survey of teachers last year, and the average school teacher in Texas pays $564 uncompensated out of their own pocket on school supplies. So if we're wasting money in education, it's not in the classroom.
James, what are your views?
We feel like particularly, I think what's most striking about those administrative numbers is the growth factor. In the last 20 years, we've seen 76, 77% more hirings in administrative positions since 1989. And against that, there hasn't been a lot of measurable student growth, so we don't feel like necessarily the increases in administrative hiring, that level of growth is necessarily of benefit to education. We would like to see some efficiencies found there, if possible.
The most startling number I saw this morning was the number that you talked about with Chairman Eisler in terms of the number of employees per 100,000 students, where Texans led the country and was 50% higher than California, I believe. I mean, that points to the fact that we need to take a hard look and create some efficiencies in the system.
Shouldn't there be more people in the classroom? I mean, I know you need to have janitors and all the other support personnel, but the rubber meets the road in a school. We're in the classroom.
And that's where we've been putting most of our costs for many years. You know, we've had an administrative cost ratio on the book for over 30 years. It really limits and judges how many administrative costs you have versus instructional costs. I don't know of a district that fails that ratio. We seem to ignore it because we're doing very well. And we see it, our budget's at 3% of the entire budget. I'm being cut 17%. I could cut the entire central office budget, and then you don't have people to do all the kind of different administrative functions, the payroll, the personnel, the hiring, all those kinds of things that have to be done, along with compliance issues as well. We have to have a lot of people to deal with compliance issues from the state as well as the federal government. I think the whole idea of saying that the administrative cost is a major issue is avoiding the problem. We're looking at administrative costs that are in the 3% range. We have seen cuts in administration in terms of the central office cuts at my district for the last 3 years. We are trying to, at this point, deal with a much greater problem. We have 22-to-1 in our schools right now. We have class sizes that are dealing with all kinds of issues. In terms of ELL students, special needs students, these are where the costs are going. In terms of supervision, we have school administrators and we have people who help teachers in terms of developing curriculum. So I think if you look at the efficiency, we are looking at efficiency and effectiveness.
The results of our education poll are coming up here on the program, plus our On Politics panel to see what you've been chatting about online this morning. Stay with us for more Session 11 after this.